All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 3. Yes. Can you believe the final day of the 2023 SABR Analytics Conference? Really appreciate everybody spending the last this weekend really with us. It's been an exciting spring in baseball. World Baseball Classic going on. Really exciting game tonight. USA Mexico here in town. I want to say thanks to our sponsor of this morning's session, Baseball Cloud, for supporting our programming. And as always, just a couple of reminders about the venue. If you're looking for a space just to get away, a little bit of quieter area, maybe you got a couple of emails you got to catch up on, 267 up there at the top of the room. As we finish presentations and things like that, we do prefer if you can ask questions in this microphone. It allows those folks watching at home to also hear the question, not just the room. And then those of you who are watching at home, hello, you can use the chat function in the webinar to get your question across. So let's go ahead and get started. Leading off this morning, we have an update from our friends at MLB Statcast. MLB continues to upgrade this system every season, and today we're going to hear about new weather data being made available, as well as high frame rate bat and biomechanics tracking. Joining us this morning are Graham Goldbeck, Product Manager, Baseball Data Platform for Major League Baseball, and Clay Nunnally, Baseball Scientist at Major League Baseball.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm Clay. Graham's here. We're going to talk about what Statcast is doing new this year. We're going to have questions after this. If you don't have a chance to get your question answered, please find us. We'll be kicking around. Come tell us what you think is interesting. Give us feedback. Tell us what you're curious about. We love hearing from everyone in this conference. I'm going to talk about weather and baseball. So let me get started and introduce you to a couple of the main characters. Wrigley Field opened in 1914. It's one of our oldest stadiums. It's built within a neighborhood. It's not the most prominent feature in that area. There's lots of buildings around it. There's no giant parking lot. It's a unique situation. It also is really close to Lake Michigan. So I wanted to provide this perspective to illustrate that that's one of the major factors in weather at Wrigley Field. Another character, Oracle Park, built in 2000. Previously, the Giants played at Candlestick Park, also on the west side of San Francisco Bay. When they moved to Oracle Park, engineers advised on the construction of the park to reduce the impact of wind. As opposed to Wrigley Field, the winds at Oracle Park are a little bit more consistent. They're driven by what is essentially a giant swamp cooler in the San Francisco area. In the summer, it's very hot inland, which makes air rise up to the stratosphere, and it draws in all of the air on the marine layer down low. That's pulling in frigid air across San Francisco. And it's actually the coldest game time temperatures of any ballpark in Major League Baseball. And that's why. So there's consistent but significant wind impacts in San Francisco, and there's consistent and always changing wind impact at Wrigley. So the region affects the environment of the game, the weather, but also the ballpark topology does too. So the winds that interact with baseball trajectories aren't exactly the prevailing winds. They have to negotiate the structure of the ballpark through what's called the barrier effect. So typically ballparks have a little nest that they protect the home plate area, the infield, and stands built around it. So that shields it from prevailing wind conditions. So if we wanted to know what the winds are doing that actually affect baseballs, we need to know a little bit more than prevailing conditions. And the way we do that this year is going to be Weather Applied Metrics. Weather Applied Metrics is a company, but it's also a technology. The company's made up of old baseball players, a meteorologist, a physics professor, and some CFD modeling experts. So if you want to know what the wind is actually doing that impacts the game on the field, you have to model that. You can't measure it. So that's what Weather Applied Metrics does. They'll solve for the exact wind field solution that meets the prevailing conditions at the time, but also obeys the boundary conditions unique to the stadium. And this is pretty computationally complex. So it takes weeks of computer time to get a wind field solution, a set of wind field solutions for a park. So they do that ahead of time. and then they can pick the one that best fits the actual ambient and prevailing conditions. All right, so this year, this is going to be rolled out into every ballpark. In the past few years, it's been in a handful of parks, and we'll talk a little bit about what we've learned from those parks. All right, some lessons that we've learned in the handful of parks that we've run this in. Sometimes small changes in the prevailing conditions can cause massive changes on field. So if you look at the two slides the two pictures on the right, those are wind field solutions at an anonymous ballpark. And the only difference is a 20-degree change in the prevailing wind direction. So a tiny change in the prevailing wind basically caused wind to go from pushing in towards right field to blowing out to right field. So that's a massive difference. It's only caused by a slight change in prevailing conditions. We've also seen that hits can be dramatically impacted by wind, which makes intuitive sense, but we've never had a great estimate or calculation of that. But hits with the highest apex can be pushed around, changing their landing position by 100 feet or more. Home runs, hits that would be home runs everywhere, can be pushed back 40 feet. We also learned that pitchers almost never pitch into a headwind because the battery is shielded typically by a stance. So the barriers impact that outcome. Almost never. But we did find that there's only one park where there has been significant headwinds for a pitcher, and that's Wrigley Field. So a headwind matters because it will knock down your velocity when you're pitching, but it also slightly probably amplifies the break that you would experience. So Dave Kagan, a physics professor, has written an article on that, and he'd speculate that if you're a pitcher, you might choose the tiny bit of additional movement as opposed to a tailwind, which would give you added velocity and less movement. All right, another unique thing happened at Wrigley Field apart from that finding. The greatest game ever pitched was pitched there. Do those two things, are they related? Let's look at the wind. This is May 6th, 1998. Let me go back to this slide. This is the Bill James game score leaders on your right here. And let me say this carefully, but I don't have confidence in the Kerry Wood game because it's the #1 Bill James game score. I have confidence in the game score because Kerry Wood's game is #1. All right, so what did the weather do this day on May 6, 1998? You can see in the box score here on the left, wind was blowing from first base to third base, 10 miles an hour, right to left. As it also is in this plot here, you can see the wind vectors throughout the day. So at start of the game, winds blowing 10 miles an hour, right to left. 30 minutes into this game, Kerry Wood's already dominating the game, and something weird happens. Temperature drops 10 degrees in less than an hour. Gusts go from negligible to 28 miles an hour. And the 15-mile-an-hour perfect headwind from the south-southwest changes to that direction as it wasn't previously. And it's 15 miles an hour, and it stays in that direction for the rest of the game. So pitching into a headwind should help movement. What did this game look like? I think a lot of you have seen it. I'm going to let Rob Friedman explain it a little bit better.
In May of 1998, at only 20 years old, Kerry Wood threw the most dominant game in baseball history. Reminder, this is only his 5th career start, and he had 20 Ks, gave up 1 hit that was arguably not a hit, had no walks, and hit 1 batter. After hitting Jerry Meals in the face mask with the first pitch of the game, Kerry Wood went on to just dominate a really tough Houston Astros lineup. I mean, this lineup had 2 Hall of Famers in it, Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell, and the Astros went on to lead the league in on-base percentage, so they were no slouch. Wood's fastball, which could touch 100 miles an hour, was just overwhelming. But his breaking stuff, holy crap, this is unbelievable. He's making Hall of Famers look like they've never seen a curveball before. Check out this swing by Brad Ausmus on a slider that bounced maybe 5 feet in front of the plate and then ended up bouncing off the backstop. Years later, in an interview, Moises Alou said he was a cocky hitter, but when he saw Kerry Wood live, he was like, oh, Jeff Bagwell was on deck for the 20th K and said if he got up, it would have been the 21st K. Kerry Wood had 54 swinging or called strikes in this game. And it only took 122 pitches for Kerry Wood to strike out 20 batters.
2 now.
Kerry Wood's game score for this game was 105.
All right, I'm gonna move on from that example, but his ball was really moving that day. That's my favorite game ever to see, and I think it may have been even, his fastball would have been even faster if he wasn't pitching into the headwind that day. All right, the example number 2 happened June 9th, 1946, just to illustrate the impact of weather on baseball. This on June 9th, there's a doubleheader. The Red Sox played the Tigers. The next day on the front page of the Boston Globe, there's a story about a storm in the Northeast. It's fairly unique because it knocked out phone lines and train service in the region, but it also tells us about Ted's longest home run, which actually hit a gentleman in the head who's wearing a straw hat. This home run was incredibly long, and you can see there's multiple different estimates at the start here, but it became an oral legend, and the Red Sox actually maintain and paint the seat where this gentleman was sitting in red. So this is persistent evidence of a home run trajectory from 1946. The first thing that I looked at when we did a LiDAR scan in Fenway Park was how far away this is from home plate. So we have the exact coordinates of that seat in the ballpark. Alan Nathan and Greg Rabarchek have both analyzed this trajectory better than I can. But in addition, I have the actual coordinates, so I know exactly how far away it is. It's 495-foot direct straight line as the crow flies to that seat. So in order for that home run that hit that seat to get back to ground, it still has another 30 feet to go because this is 30 foot in height off the ground. So my estimate for this home run distance is 525 feet, and I think that's fairly conservative. Alan Nathan has estimated that this trajectory at launch was about 33 degrees and 115 miles an hour. For context, I'll play this video.
So
All of this is the
drastic improvement.
longest home runs in the Statcast era, and there's only a handful that ever breached 500 feet. So how is it possible that Ted Williams eclipses that by 20 to 30 feet? Or is it not real at all?
Why?
So what you look at is the wind that day, June 9th, 1946. This is a doubleheader that they started before noon because they don't have lights at Fenway Park. The wind is going pretty consistently 24 miles an hour from the west to the east. That's a perfect tailwind for a trajectory to right field. But remember the wind shadow of the park. How can that affect the home run by that much? Well, the third and final clue here is Fenway Park itself. In 1914, Fenway Park only had one section of banked seating. There's no upper deck. There's a roof, which is the tallest structure along the third baseline, and it's only 40 feet tall. They didn't add lights or the second deck to Fenway until 1947. So in 1946, you have the confluence of events, a greatest ever hitter type, arguably Ted Williams at age 27, a strong wind in the right direction based on an unusual and damaging storm in the Northeast, and what's essentially the shortest stadium wind shadow of any major league ballpark. It's only 40 feet. So Ted's home run entered the jet stream of the prevailing wind before it passed first base, and 90% of the trajectory's hang time was spent in unabated 25-mile-an-hour wind. So all three of those ingredients are exactly what you need to produce the longest home run in history. So the point of all these examples is just that weather has always been part of the story of baseball. We just haven't been able to measure it very well until now. All right, next up is Graham. He's going to talk about our high frame rate upgrade. Graham Goldbeck.
Thanks, Clay. So here today, I'm going to talk to you about the Statcast high frame rate upgrade we're doing this season. So first, what is a Statcast high frame rate upgrade? So we piloted this with the Dodgers in Houston in 2022. You might have seen some of it in the All-Star game and also in the second half of the season, a lot of RSNs. So what we did is we replaced 5 of the 100 frame per second cameras with 300 frame per second ones. For a quick refresher, Statcast instead of 2020 was a 12 camera, all camera-based system. And so 5 cameras, the ones I circled in red, are the ones focused on the home plate pitch to mound area. And those are running at 100 hertz. Now they'll be running at 300 hertz. So why do we do this? So this produces bat tracking and biomechanics data sets that we're very excited about. I want to show you a little bit of what we think it can do for us today. So why upgrade the system? So we at the league view bat tracking as kind of the next frontier of batter and pitcher performance. I like to think of it as we, kind of drilling down a further level. We started with pitching, we said, velocities and breaks, and then we started looking at spin rates and spin axis. Then we're looking at even more seam orientation. Eventually we're probably looking at grips or other things to kind of just get a full picture of how the ball moves the way it does. For on the batting side, we started with exit velocity and launch angle, and we kind of feel like this is the next step with bat tracking to explain why the ball went so fast it did, or why the ball went at an ideal launch angle. So like I said, provides cans with context to the exit velo and launch angles. Additionally, the biomechanics data set, we believe, can help demonstrate how players perform incredible feats they do. How do they able to swing so hard? How are they able to throw so hard? How are they able to get so much movement on their curveballs and sliders? Additionally, we had 17 MLB clubs had already installed this high frame rate system on their own in MLB parks by 2022. So teams were using this to evaluate players and get a better handle on how to improve their players. And since so many teams are doing it, we want to make sure we can explain that to fans as well, so fans aren't left in the dark as to what's kind of going on in the league. So what is the bat tracking data set? So on the right here, we have an image, what we call like a mosaic, which is the 20 frames or 24 frames or so around bat contact. So this is kind of what the camera is looking at. It detects the bat. It tracks the head and the handle of the bat throughout the swing. So we're able to capture both the time series data of the head and handle based on the XY positions. Additionally, we're a lot of other tertiary data coming out of that. So we can find the speeds of various things, whether it's the speed of the sweet spot of the bat or the speed of the head of the bat or the handle. We can do the attack angle, impact point, so we can see where along the bat the ball struck, not only horizontally, but also across the bat, and a bunch of other things too. So what does this tell us? What can we learn with some of this information? So bat speed, I think, is one of the big things that the system produces. We've been using exit velocity for a lot of time now. We know the guy hits a home run, it was 110 miles an hour. But kind of how can you get to that 110 miles per hour is kind of important. So, well, I kind of think of bat speed as kind of equivalent to pitch speed. Like you don't need to throw the hardest to succeed, but it doesn't hurt. Basically, the harder you swing, it probably gives you a little more margin for error in terms of when you actually make contact, that you can have the success you do. One of the things we're also thinking about is how do we explain bat speed to people? The bat is not an object that, pitch speed is just moving the ball as it comes out of the pitcher's hand. So like, do we do the bat as it makes contact? What if the bat doesn't make contact with the ball? Then what speed do you use? Do you do it right before, right after? What part of the bat do you use? We kind of right now have settled for bat speed to use the sweet spot of the bat, which we're saying is about 6 inches off the head of the bat. We chose that for now because we kind of want to standardize the speed. We could have used, say, the impact point speed, but in that case, where you struck the ball in the bat would drive how fast the bat is moving there, because the head of the bat is moving a lot farther than, say, the hands. And so as a result, as you go along the bat moves at different speeds. So, one of the things we could do is start showing leaderboards about who swings the hardest, who has the fastest bat speeds. We also can do visualization. So this it's a home run a lot of you are probably familiar with. Play just for a reminder.
In the try to close it.
Apologies to all Mariners fans and grab.
Alvarez launches deep right field. That's what it's good.
So now we have, like I said before, we were testing this bat tracking data with Houston. So our darkroom team at MLB, who do a great job with visuals and putting things out on social media, put together this bat tracking clip, which was available, I think, within a minute or two of you done hitting the home run. It garnered a ton of views on TikTok. I personally am old, so I don't really know the numbers were, but I was told it was very good. And now we can show what it looks like. So we can visualize the bat speed as it goes along, the speed of the ball, and then we can see, the resulting exit velo. For this case, almost 170 miles an hour, very good home run. But in addition to bat speed, one of the other things we talked about was attack angle. So attack angle is the YZ velocity vector component, that angle as the batter of the impact point as the bat right before it makes contact with the ball. So you can kind of think of it as akin to launch angle. The attack angle generally has a decent effect on the launch angle of the ball. But, this is like you hear about an uppercut swing and you hear about a flat swing. Now we can actually see, we measure these swings, and I know Mike Petriello for the Home Run Derby put together this great graphic with ESPN, kind of illustrating the differences between an uppercut swing and a flat swing. You can see the attack angle is very different. We visually can see this, and I'll show you in a bit what that looks like, but you can see that it plays out very differently. The uppercut swing, at least for the data set we had, seems to have a much higher average distance, a little bit hard hit rate, and barrel rate's a lot higher, and the WOBA on contact too. So now remember, keep in mind that this is only on contact. I think what we'll see later is the uppercut swing probably doesn't have as much contact as the flat swing. So this suggests, when you do contact the ball, you do more damage with this type of swing, but you also have to be aware you're probably not contacting the ball as much. So what does this kind of look like? So this was a play in the NLDS Game 2, bottom 8, 2 outs, 2 on, Dodgers down 5-3. Cody Bellinger's facing Josh Hader, and Dave Roberts pinch hits with Austin Barnes instead of Chris Taylor. And here's him after the game talking about why he did that.
Austin, I really like Hader's tough on him, but I just felt that Austin's short swing is flat path, Hader throws some worse and by fastball. CT's got a swing that's more uphill.
So it was a little quiet, but what Roberts said is that he thought Austin Barnes' swing had more of a flat path, which he liked playing better against Hader's, high fastball, compared to Taylor's more longer uppercut swing. So what does that look like? So a broadcast group has these graphics, which you may have seen in some of the broadcasts last year, kind of visualizing the swing as it plays. So I'll play both, see if we can play at the same time. So we have Barnes up there, and then Taylor here. And you can see, I pause it for a sec, you can see these two swing paths look very different. You can see Austin Barnes as it approaches the ball, kind of much flatter, much in line with it. And whereas Taylor's is much more coming from the top, more uppercutty swing. Like I said, in both these cases, they both hit home runs, so you can succeed in both ways. But there's differences in each of these. And again, we think this can help explain, and you see the after effect as well, what it looks like on the follow through, help explain the differences on players' different swings and which can have success against various pitch types in various situations.
Austin, I really love.
Additionally, we can talk about the impact point. So this is where along the bat the ball strikes the bat. So we have a couple different examples of graphics here that we've used. On the top left, we have one put together by Tom Tango and Mike Petriello for an article on MLB.com showing the graphic using on the bat, the WOBA based on where the ball struck the bat. No other information. We don't know the attack angle. We don't know bat speed, and like this. It's just showing just straight up where you hit the ball in the bat, the resulting WOBA. And you can see now the sweet spot kind of lies somewhere between 5 and 8 inches from the head of the bat. That big red circle kind of in the middle there. Similarly, on the bottom left, during the Home Run Derby, one of our partners at Ross Scoreboard Solutions, they did a graphic here showing where this is an Acuna home run. They can show exactly on the bottom left here where on the bat the sweet spot is and kind of where the ball hit relative to it and the success. Similarly, Bailey Brown, one of our analysts, put together this graphic on the right, taking two similar, very characteristic hits. So again, these two hits from Altuve and Chapman have very similar exit velo, very similar launch angle. But the projected distance is very different, as you can see. One flew almost 100 feet further than the farther. And you can see we've kind of plotted in the bottom where along the bat you hit and kind of the successes you can have. Like, if you hit it more on the lower part of the bat, you can still hit the ball really hard, but it results in a foul, likely because the launch angle is fairly lower compared to the doubles and home runs are mostly closer to the center of the bat. Some additional ideas we have. I'll bring up both these at once. So one of the things we talked about is maybe swing and miss distance. Those are especially close to my heart. For a long time, we've just explained things like in the box scores, you see that a guy had a swinging strike. And it's like, what happened? Like, if you watch the play, you can see it, but you don't really know, not all swing and misses are the same. So I like to think of fouls similar. Like a foul is a foul, but a foul can be a ball you barely tipped that went straight in the ground and roll off the beam, or a foul can be a 350-foot thing down the line that just went to the side of the pole. And we called both of those foul. But now with the hit data and the launch angle, we can actually see there's a big difference between those two things in terms of counting what actually happened. Similarly, with the bat tracking data, we can now measure swing and miss distance. So I think I picked this Jeremy Pena swing where he swung and missed, and the bat and the ball, at least in this case, we're counting swing and miss distance is the distance from the ball to the bat, any part along the bat, any part along the trajectory. So basically the closest the two objects ever get to one another. So you can put together this leaderboard. You can look at different pitch types. You can see how do players swing and miss at various pitch types, distances, things like that. You can see fastballs, players are swinging under fastballs quite a bit. As you can see, they have a negative miss relative to the ball. And most of the other pitch types are swinging over. You can see sinkers, they're swinging actually on average, like right, the sinker is probably just off to the side of the bat as opposed to above or below it. And on the right here, one of the things we talked about is kind of bat and ball path intersections. So whenever engineers put this together, looking at two different plays here, on the top, we have a Jose Altuve home run, the bottom where you're on Alvarez ground out. And we can see kind of the path of the bat in green and blue and the path of the ball in red. And we can see, where do the two intersect? You kind of pause it right here and you can see the Altuve one, his swing path is very much in line with the trajectory of the ball. So it probably allows you more opportunities in terms of timing to be able to hit it, make contact and do damage. Whereas the Jordan one, the bottom, it's a little hard to see, but he basically only has about 1 or 2 frames of data where the bat and the ball are intersecting. He does actually make contact during that time, but again, it leaves you with less of a window for success. Some additional ideas we've thought about. Again, there's, I think, a limitless amount of things we can do here, but some things we've thrown around. Hitter timing, like, can we better explain, when batters start their swing, if pitchers fooling batters. So think about this. You have a pitcher, he throws a pitch, the batter swings and misses, and the swing and miss distance was like 4 or 5 inches. That's probably pretty big. So, he swung and missed over a curveball. One of the things I was thinking is, well, what if you could take the initial, vector, velocity vector, so the release angle, or the pitcher, you can put his average fastball trajectory characteristics in there and kind of do the same overlay. And then we see, oh, it turns out the batter's swing path was right in line with that fastball. So maybe that we can consider him fooled. He expected fastball. He swung as if he got a fastball. It was actually a curveball. So we can give credit to the pitcher for that and say, hey, the pitcher had success here. I think while we think of the bat as something the batter has control over, I think this will kind of do a lot of things for pitchers and analysis as well. Some other things, how long can you keep in the bat in the zone? You hear about that a lot, being able to have a swing pass such that you can maximize the amount of time your bat is kind of over the plate and in the ideal area. And even things like how late can you start your swing from a timing standpoint? If you're able to get your bat speed up to speed quicker, you can probably sit and wait for a little bit and then maybe have more success because you can see the ball better and figure out what pitch is coming. So we also, like I said earlier, we want to know what you want to see. So come talk to us, let us know. We think, again, there's a limitless amount of things we can do with this data, and we really want to bring it to the fans and kind of show people what we can learn about the game with the bat tracking data. And that is it. So we have some questions in the chat. Andrew, could you eventually see this technology in MILB parks in the near future? So I think a lot of clubs already have these systems installed in a number of their minor league ballparks. I think at the league level, not yet. No, we want to kind of see how this goes in MLB first, and then we can kind of think about it in the future of minor league baseball and where this technology goes. Octavio, can we compare blast motion data with this benchmark fast speed attack that is now publicly available? Thanks. Yeah, I think it's something we're working through. I think the two data sets can be a little different. They measure things in different ways. One is, I think, blast, for example, I think is mostly sensor based and computer vision based. We've seen with different technologies, sometimes things can be a little different. So they may not be a 1-for-1 to each other, but likely they kind of go things in the same direction. So yeah, comparisons can definitely happen. And those are things we're doing to kind of validate all kinds of systems as we progress through this. Is there bat tracking data out for the public students to do research on? So not yet. I think for this year, we're imagining, like I said, we saw this on broadcast last year. You might see other things in the future on other websites and other MLB products. I think we're still kind of thinking through how much of this data we can share, what parts of it. These are ongoing conversations we're having at the league. So if this is a thing that interests you, let us know, and we'd love to be able to help out. Any questions in the crowd on either the weather or the bat?
We're really tight on time.
Okay, no worries.
Come play this.
Yeah, we'll be around. Thank you.